Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Criminal Justice Insider with Babs Rolls-Ivy and Jeff Grant. Babs is not with us this morning. I'll explain that in a second. First, I want to thank our wonderful sponsor, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, for sponsoring the show. Without you, we wouldn't be here. A little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get to our guests. First of all, our dear, sweet, wonderful Babs is having a procedure today. So if you'll all join me in prayers for her successful procedure and swift recovery, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. The second is I am nursing kind of a cold. Last weekend, we finally, after in COVID, got to see our grandchildren down in Virginia. And of course, when you're with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, they're with all their friends. So we all have colds. We don't have the vid, don't worry about it. But I am fully vaccinated for months because I'm a first responder. But their kids are always sick, so we're all walking around with little colds. So if you hear me sucking on a throat lozenge or something, I apologize. And last, I just want to make an announcement that our white collar support group that we run on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, sorry. Next week, so not this coming Monday, but the Monday after, March 29th, is celebrating its 250th online meeting. So that's an incredible accomplishment for a group of people. Shannon has been on our meeting, which is actually how I met him. So we'll kind of get around to that in a second. But for anybody who wants information about that or would like to join us for our 250th meeting, you can go to our website, prisonist.org. That's prisonist like feminist.org, or any of our social media sites, and you'll just link right through. And if you are justice impacted, we would love to have you. Unfortunately, not friends, family, press, nobody else gets on that call unless you've been directly justice impacted. And it is open to everyone justice impacted, not just white collar people. So we aim to be inclusive. And so that's a very exciting development coming up. So turning to today's guests, we have Shannon Ross and Kayleigh Atkinson. I have to tell you that I've become a big fan in a very short amount of time. I don't know that much about Kayleigh, but your bio is like super cool. And Shannon actually logged on to our support group meeting, kind of fresh out of prison. And he's taking Milwaukee and the country by storm. He's done some incredible things in prison, including the largest, you're going to have to help me here, Shannon, the largest newsletter in Wisconsin, maybe the country, I don't know, but in Wisconsin for incarcerated people. And it's distributed in all the prisons in Wisconsin, and actually underwritten by the Department of Corrections of Wisconsin. So that's pretty crazy. And they're doing all kinds of other things. And so on the show, we basically have two missions. One is kind of Connecticut centric, and then the other is to bring interesting and topical people and subjects from around the country to everyone's attention. So I'll let you two introduce yourselves fully, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of the conversation. So Shannon, why don't we start with you? Take 3 or 4 minutes, introduce yourself, then we'll have Kayleigh do the same, and we'll kind of talk about your projects and how they all go together. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting us too.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I want to point out is that the DOC doesn't necessarily underwrite it. We've had some issues with them recently where they want to make sure that we're not saying any kind of a contractual relationship exists more than it does. So we're in talks to maybe have them support our COVID vaccine project to let all of our readers know about the myths and the stories and just have better information so they can make decisions of their own. The DOC actually cannot contract with people that are on supervision. So that's been kind of the issue. Currently, they're trying to find out what they can do and what they can't do with that. So yeah, as for me, I spent 17 years in the Wisconsin prison system. I got out September 22nd. I did reach out to you, of course, going to the support group a couple of times and trying to just get involved in a variety of things nationally and just see what's all available and, you know, who's doing really great work in this space, such as yourself. So just trying to get the newsletter, I guess, as much as possible, all the information that we can from the different organizations in the state and even nationally that are doing stuff that's relevant to those inside, available to them. So they're able to know what's available right now and when they get out, and trying to build on any momentum that, you know, I personally have with people that I know here and nationally, and make connections. We'll probably talk more about some of that later on, and getting going into the Correct the Narrative campaign, which is where I met the wonderful Kayleigh. So just trying to expand on any ways, any ideas that I had when I was inside, conversations I had with people, frustrations I had that I thought were not really being addressed in a lot of the reform, reentry, abolition movements out here that probably could be, and trying to also be humble about areas where I may have thought there was a need, but maybe there isn't a need so much. It's just more complex than that in these conversations I'm having with people, and trying to just increase whatever I can from whatever value I have in this space to really make things better with less people in prison and more people having opportunities when they get out to be seen in a more accurate light.
Thank you, Shannon. Kayleigh, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into conversation.
Perfect. My name is Kayleigh Atkinson. I'm an artist, a photographer, documentary filmmaker, and my partner is incarcerated. And I had this thought. I was in a coffee shop one day and just trying to find support for what I'm going through, and learning. I'm like hungry. I'm always a sponge, and I always want to learn and make a difference. And so him and I started a podcast recording the federal phone calls that were already being recorded. I just thought that was kind of clever. And I started posting it and got a really good response from my family and my community and the people that I grew up with, because that is kind of we call them the non-choir, the people who aren't necessarily involved or are privileged enough to not have to look in that direction. And then an old general manager of a restaurant I used to work with connected me to Ellie Rivera and Ruben Gaona, who are also doing amazing work for the reentry population. And then they introduced me to Shannon, and the rest is literally history. So I think Shannon and I just have a really, really cool working relationship, and the ideas, it's like we think on the same level, and things that he's wanted, I'm able to manifest with my talents in the arts world. So it's been really incredibly fulfilling. And yeah, we started with the Correcting the Narrative campaign, and now we're making a featured documentary and a lot of other things. So it's really exciting. And it's this really beautiful, again, like yesterday, someone used the word unlearning, which I thought was really potent to this work. And we're trying to decondition the brain while also making a difference to the people who need it immediately, but also healing the non-choir and showing people like this does affect everyone. The ripples are great. So yeah, this work is extremely fulfilling. And like I said, do good recklessly, definitely my little mantra. So yeah, thank you for having us, and I'm excited to talk more.
Why don't we go a little bit deep into your criminal justice background, because I think that we got to give this some context. And Shannon, we had a prep call not so long ago, and you told me about your family's history of incarceration and how that wound up leading to some mistakes you made. So whatever you're comfortable with talking about on camera, why don't you kind of like take us there and kind of set the stage as to how you wound up spending 17 years in prison.
Yeah, so when I got into prison, actually when I was in county jail, my parents told me that they had actually been down this road before, and I had no knowledge at all that my father had spent 5 years in the Wisconsin prison system, and that my parents actually got married while my father was at Waupun, which is the castle in Wisconsin. It's the probably second or third oldest prison, but when you see it, it's called the castle because it looks pretty much like a castle. And that was he was in graduate school. He had gone to Marquette, and he was trying to get tuition to go to WM for a graduate degree in history. And basically he had some disagreements with his father about things. couldn't get money for tuition, and he robbed some store with, I think, a gun that had no bullets in it. And he would have never even got time in, but because of the beef he had with his father, my grandpa, he was telling the court basically stories about how, you know, much of a threat my father was to my mother, which was not true. And this is something that I'm a very skeptical person. I'm very much like, if somebody tells me something, I want to know more about it. I don't just take your word at it, even if you're somebody that I, you know, in my family, I still want a little more information, because I know from my own background that people can be not who they seem to be all the time. There's always hidden stories that we might have in our lives. And so just other information from other people, it became pretty clear to me that that was true, that he was not a threat, that it was just my grandpa making this up. So long story told, and now summarized, he did 5 years in because of that, which he would have just had probation and probably never even went if he was getting the tuition help that he was supposed to from his father as agreed upon. So then when I went to prison, it wasn't really anything connected to it. Like I said, I never even knew he was in. So if somebody would hear that and say, oh, you know, parents incarcerated, now the son's incarcerated. But in my case, there was never any knowledge. So there was no reason for me to have that mental self-esteem, that, you know, boost to go to prison, because my father was, none of that connection was there. I also grew up in an area where the neighborhood was not great, but it wasn't terrible. It was like what I kind of call hood adjacent. And my upbringing was very middle class upbringing, because I never really had significant wants. I never had a lot of great things, but I didn't have significant wants. And so it's something where I don't always feel like my story is one that connects with the usual stereotype of people who go to prison. I didn't have addiction issues. We didn't have massive poverty we dealt with. I didn't have a need to start selling drugs and end up, you know, leading to a violent crime, which is why I went to prison. It's just something where I fell into that because of kind of the neighborhood, kind of the listening to a lot of media and rap, and having my mind around these certain miseducation and manhood tropes that I had to follow. And I bought into pretty deeply. And I have a mentality and a personality where I follow through on things, good or bad. And this case was bad. And so if I didn't have the right structure to understand what I needed to do and what was a rule and what wasn't a rule, and where I needed to really be able to adjust to the circumstance versus just thinking, always do this, always do that, that was where I fell into a very bad space then. And so it works usually in a very good way now. It has when I was inside and I got my degree, and I was able to pursue a lot of positive efforts and get this organization going when I was inside. But at the time, it just attached itself to a poisonous mentality of how I had to respond when somebody robbed me, or how I had to respond if I was, you know, in this street life or this drug life crap. So it's just, you know, it's an unfortunate situation where a lot of destruction happened on both sides, families, and a lot of pain, and trying to just do what I can to take from the refuse and the rubble of that event and build something that can really be used going forward to have a lot of positivity and a lot of just enlightenment and any kind of healing that can come from these situations as much as possible.
So Shannon, let's be clear. You had this altercation with this guy,
Mm-hmm.
And when we were talking about it in our prep call, you told me that your life's an open book. You're willing to talk about things. So,
Absolutely.
So you wound up killing this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you dealt with that in terms of your shame, guilt, remorse, healing? What have you had to come to terms with having taken someone else's life?
The coming to terms is largely on the effect that I've had on the people that still exist, of course, right? So I think about that and I see in my own family, and I don't really know the victim's family, so I can't really say how it's affecting them, but I know my own family and I know how it affected people in my life. And so I can only imagine and extrapolate and magnify that for his family. And so that is definitely a weighty thing to carry around. I have never been one to allow shame or guilt just destroy me. Mm-hmm. So I very much take what happens in life, whether it's something that I did or that happens to me, and use that as a lesson to use in another way going forward. So I've never been one to carry that sense of society wants to hear from somebody who took a life, that every day it's something that I think about, and that it's something that, you know, it is, if I could take my own life, I would. All these very strong, high terms that we want, people want, you know, a situation where I, you know, what I did to say. But I've never been able to say that because that's just not the way I've responded. I just have always been very conscious of what I've done and the effect it's had. And that is what ultimately has motivated me to really devote so much of my time. And I mean so much. Like, I am every day, hour upon hour, devoted to trying to build things up for this organization to have a benefit in other areas, not for myself. I don't get paid. I do this. I could probably jump into a variety of areas and, start having a pretty well good job, but it motivates me that way. It doesn't really hold me down and weigh me down and make me always this very shamed and guilt stricken, but it motivates me to do something with that. And that's something that I wonder if society will always have, or not always, if they will encounter that response to it as avoiding or as just a different way of remorse, a different way of processing it. I'm very curious to see how that comes about because I'm very honest with the way that I have responded to it. I'm honest that it's not something that they may want to hear as the response from somebody who took a life, but that is unfortunately the way it is for a lot of people. And I know that from being in prison with a lot of people who will say that they don't feel that same super sense of overwhelming guilt, but they have something they want to do about it. Or they had an altercation with somebody and on both sides, one person says, well, it's either me or him. And that's not my situation, but it's just complex when people respond to these types of situations of taking life. It's not always this overwhelming guilt. You're in these environments where people really feel they have to sometimes, or it's just part of this crazy crap world of street life. So that's always been my response. I'm very curious to know how people will take that going forward as, the outcome for me mentally.
I know when we spoke, you told me that you never directly reached out to this man's family.
Yeah, because you can't. Yeah,
because you can't, obviously. But you're on camera right now, so assuming they're going to watch this, okay, they may not watch it, but assuming they're going to, and you had a minute to talk to them directly, to say something, because that wouldn't be breaching anything. They're free to watch or not.
Right.
What would you say to them?
Definitely. And I said this with the courtroom too, the day where they were there when I gave us my whatever talks speech, I don't even know what you would call it, that immensely remorseful for what I caused in their lives and the destruction that it created in so many ways, not just for one person connected to, the victim, but to so many people that were connected to him. I know other people that were connected to him, and I've talked to them about that, and I am fully aware of how that has impacted people. And it's something that I can only hope that they understand that everything I'm doing has a base from that event that I created, that I caused, that destruction I caused, to do something to eliminate or lessen that happening in other people's lives, and to eliminate and lessen that people get out of prison from same types of things. Because it's you have people who were the victims of crime like that as well, and trying to help in a variety of ways, lessening that happening in other lives, whether it's preventative or it's some kind of healing on the back end. That's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to find ways that I can to address now what I had caused then, and the mentality that I was in, that people are still in at this time, as you see in so many events that happen daily with crime in the city and around the country, with the recklessness that a lot of youth have. Just trying to use that event to lessen and to eliminate people going through the same pain and destruction that I caused to their family. So this is my way of doing it, and I'm sorry, and I'm sorry in my actions every time.
In the recovery world, that's called the living amends, because you can't make amends to the dead, really, and you can't make an amends in some cases to people who we've hurt, because either the court won't allow or because it's just not inappropriate. So we make a living amends. We live a better life, and we try to do the best we can. And so that's like the third expression already today that is out there. Do good recklessly is one, unlearning is another, and maybe living amends is something that we can all use as a takeaway.
Like that.
So Kayleigh, you've come into criminal justice world in a big way, because your partner is in prison. You have a professional relationship with Shannon, who has a long criminal justice history and is doing all this work. You're making movies, documentaries about criminal justice. So how do you get into this? There's probably a million things you could be doing. Why so deeply into criminal justice?
It's funny when this is something weird to say. I've always had a lot of compassion for the prison population for some reason. I remember sophomore year of high school, we were learning, it was in sociology class, we were learning about absolutes. And so we had to write an essay about what absolute do you believe in? And I said, I absolutely do not believe in the death penalty. And that was like crazy for where I was. Everyone was like, no, we believe in the death penalty. And for some reason, ever since then, I've really just had compassion for that group, but it's not just that group. It's always been like the other or the throwaway culture or something of that nature has just always really piqued my curiosity. And I've wanted to give back to that community in some way. So it just makes sense that I've gotten into criminal justice work because again, it's like an underserved population that people don't talk about it. It's taboo, it's highly stigmatized. So that's my short form answer.
Can you give us a snippet about what your partner is in for? You know, I don't want you to violate any
yeah, sure. No, it's okay. He's fine.
Yeah, okay.
His charge is felon in possession of stolen firearm, federal charge. So we met not long before he actually got arrested. I was with him when we both got arrested, but I have a history of travel. I'm very nomadic, like went around the world by myself. And I've always been like one of those girls who wants to just buy a van and like travel the country by myself. So when I met, and I seen that I have friends that do that. And I lived in a small town in Australia where that was normal. So I meet this beautiful man who's a musician, like busking on the street for money, who lives out of his car. That's not weird to me. That's like those are my people. He was a fugitive. Like, what do you, I never would have thought of that. So that's our story.
Maybe not so much your people.
Hey, they are.
Yeah,
They are. We are.
Now, yeah.
Totally. So that's another little snippet. But as difficult and as hard it's been for the last 2 and a bit years now, it's also been like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The day after he got locked up and I was released, I chose to be sober. That was a huge, huge thing for me. I was able to quit the service industry. I was able to focus on what I want to do in this world, which is share stories of stigmatized populations in order to break taboos. And just the people that I'm meeting in this city that I never thought I wanted to be in has been so fulfilling. So it's hard to say that this is like the best thing that's ever happened to me because it's horrible at the same time. But sometimes you're talking about recovery. I'm assuming you live in recovery also. Okay. And then, so, your rock bottom is like kind of what makes you. So I've had a couple of those. And now this is a whole different side of that. And the fact that I can share that with the world through art making and collaborating with people like Shannon, who, these people that I'm working with in the film world, telling their stories, they've also become my best friends. I don't think I told Shannon this, but this means a lot to me. So Christmas Day, the only 2 people who like text me Merry Christmas were Shannon and Ruben, who are both participating in the film, but they're also like my dear friends. So it means a lot to me. This work isn't just work. It's not just making the films. It's like making a difference, literally.
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation with the 2 of you is because Shannon sent me the links to some of the YouTube videos, and they're short clips, but they're done beautifully. They're very powerful. And there seems to be a movement around the country of people who are trying to bring stories of not just incarcerated people, but they're kind of digging deep into who they are as people, into their souls, and somehow communicating that in a way so that people can see that categorically, there's nothing categorical about them. They're each one is a pure, beautiful soul who has a voice, and that's what I got out of those clips. And so within the show notes here, and at the end, I'll give you an opportunity to tell everyone where to find them And so anyway, and by the way, tell your partner he can certainly be in communication with me. I don't know if he's got email where he is in the federal system, but if he does, definitely. And if not, he can write me. Why don't we jump into first? Let's jump into the community, and then we'll go into to correct the narrative campaign, and then we'll kind of get into all the other stuff you guys are doing, right, including the documentary. So why don't we just start? Tell us about the community, because that's the thing that I think when most people, Shannon, when most people think of you, that's what they think of.
Mm.
So why don't you tell us all about that?
Yeah. So the community started officially 2014, December 2014. That was the first issue we put out. It was, I never will say, I never feel comfortable saying that I created it, because it would not exist if it weren't for Jim Kaufman, Donald Buzanowski, and my mom. All of them played a significant part in getting it going.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sean Pica as well at Hudson Link. I don't know if you're familiar with Hudson Link, the in-person college program.
Sean's a good friend of ours, and
Yeah.
And by the way, shout outs are fine during this, so you can shout out, hey Sean, it's good to see you, whatever. We're good.
So yeah, he donated and got us going, and just from there went from a readership of about 200 people to bit by bit through a variety of ups and downs. We were completely blocked by the DOC at one point. Apparently they said that was a mistake, and it was supposed to be one issue, and we had to build our readership all the way back up. It was a physical issue at first. When the emails started, when I say emails, that's not really what it is in prison. It's always a messaging system that is monitored just the way a regular mail is, and sometimes can take just as long to get in to the system, but it's a lot cheaper. And when that started, we went to that platform. And we were able to eventually get to now we're between 9,000 and 10,000 readers inside, which is roughly either over or right at half the Wisconsin prison population. The prison population here has gone down, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 people since COVID. So we'll see if that stays. That's going to be a running thing across the country if these COVID gains or however angle you want to come at it, losses is going to stay. But so the community, basically the entire premise from the beginning, and what it said, the very first couple words of our first issue were our purpose to connect. And we're simply trying to connect people inside, and by extension, their loved ones. We've been dealing with a lot of loved ones throughout, and even more so with the stimulus check filings and the help we've been going through with. And I say going through because it's been a going through dealing with the IRS and the DOC with the variety of headaches with the IRS stimulus checks. And just trying to connect them to as much information as possible so that they are as successful and prepared upon release. And I mean that in every way, whether it's things right now they can do to make money, that have a little comfort so they can focus on other more positive things like writing or artwork that they can sell, contests they can enter, scholarships they can put in for to get into school, schools that are available for them to start taking courses. With the Pell Grants coming up, that's going to be a big game changer again. That's a fantastic thing. Personal development information. We had a newsletter called Keep Moving Forward that is probably going to get folded into a larger version now going forward. But that was just all self-help type of information that's boiled down to be more digestible for the demographic of people inside, because things are written in self-help books for, a wider group, usually free population, and inside you can cater it so it's a little more understandable for how it applies to people that are in a cell all day or don't have the availability of technology and have to find ways to get away from somebody that maybe they're living with that they have to deal with, and they can't just go have a quiet place for an hour. Like, you have to find a place in your head almost. So what we're getting going on now is really a lot of career information, just putting together a customized career project. And that's the development is in the stages of where we're going to have partners and sponsors and industries and companies. Mm-hmm. But the basic premise is going to be that we can start getting people aware of what they can do when they get out for not just a job, but a career. And so working with one of the companies like Ruben Gowan is, who Kayleigh mentioned earlier, they have a job matching program that they do is really cool. It's newer. They just won Generator in our state for that, which is an innovation startup hub. And they're just connecting justice impacted job seekers with employers through a blind algorithm where each side is not aware of who's on the other side. And they're seeing at the end of it, oh, there's really a good person here, or there's really a good company here. And so it's opening up the idea of employers that they can really employ these people and that they need them and that they're good matches. You've just been avoiding that because of that one label. And so using their abilities to find out what a person has an aptitude for. We can set people inside having an understanding of what they have an aptitude for, what they can do legally, bureaucratically, and financially when they get out, instead of dreaming recklessly for 5 years and finding upon release that they can't do something they wanted to do for so long. And then we can start getting them 50, 60, 70% prepared just by literature, through correspondence, having part-time mentors as well. So that's going to be the next stage of it, but just as continually ongoing, trying to use this connection with half the prison population and continuing to try to grow it to get people as much information as possible to be as successful as possible upon release is what the community has turned into. So it's the most widely read publication in the Wisconsin prison system, but I feel like I really want to get a better term for that because it's just the best connection to get into the prison population. It's call it pre-entry is the term that I've been using for a while now, is to get people ready before release, because reentry starts when they get out. That shouldn't be when we start focusing on these things. We should be focusing on it as soon as, ideally, they're in the back of the paddy wagon. You know, that's when reentry should start, as my friend Adam Purcell says, that as early as possible. So this is the pre-entry angle and trying to get them as prepared as possible by the time that they hit the door, and that they don't have to learn that when they get out and learn how to swim in a hurricane. They're already ready to a large degree.
Shannon, how long since your release? How long have you been released?
Not even 6 months. It's been, not even close.
So, dude, I have to tell you that for anyone out there not paying attention to that kind of information, you do not sound like someone who just served a 17-year bid and then pops out and in 6 months. I mean, I guess the point I'm making is that people don't know what really goes on inside a prison. What a think tank kind of place it is. People have time and they learn a lot, and it's a real community inside prison. And so this is not like a slingshot hit after in 6 months worth of energy. This has been going on for a long time while you've been in prison, learning and growing and so one other thing before we get to the next topic, how were you able to deal with all the technology when you got out of prison after 17 years? Because when you went to prison, there was almost not an internet. So how have you been able to get up to speed in 6 months after a 17-year bid?
Yeah. So I was pretty internet literate when I went in. It was 2003, so that had been going on. It wasn't to the degree that it is now. There were no smartphones. That definitely is wildly new. I had a big Nokia with the flip out, and so that was, I was one of the first ones in my class in high school to have one, but it's like a backpack in my pocket. But two things allowed me to get out with that mentality. One is, for whatever reason, and I say this all the time, I take no credit for my ability to catch on to things quickly and to just resiliently handle issues that come into my life. And so right when I went in, I had this mentality of, okay, well, start looking to what I'm going to be doing when I get out. And over time, technology was a clear component that I had to pay attention to. Reading Wired magazine, reading articles in newspapers and other publications routinely to kind of keep up on things. I was reading about shows that I never saw. To this day, I can tell you about a TV show and make it seem like I have seen the show, but I've never once seen it. Like Game of Thrones, I've never once seen that. But I could probably talk to you, make you think I've seen it because I've read articles about it, just because I want to be aware of kind of what's going on with trends. And so that was a big part of it. Another part as well is that when I was inside, I actually had a cell phone for a brief period. And so that's an interesting story in itself, that it brings up, it's a complex topic because the DOC doesn't want to hear people have cell phones. They don't want, and I don't want to be seen as encouraging that at all.
Don't you get a shot for a cell phone? I mean, that's like a high level shot.
So in Wisconsin, it is not that big of a deal if you're at a work release, because so many people get them work releases that they just send you back to like a previous custody level. For me, it kind of was, because I ended up getting sent 3 hours from home. I went from being 5 minutes from home to 3 hours from home, and that's where I ended up getting released from. But it's just an interesting aspect of how I was able to acquire so much to prepare myself for release in the short amount of time that I had a cell phone than I was at all through all the readings and programs available in prison, because that gets you ready for what's going to be coming more than some kind of cognitive thinking that they want you to take, or some kind of old book that they have on computer basics that is available. So it's just, there's a lot there, a lot of lessons to be, I think, applied to the way the system is operating, the things that are available, with how it is that you can learn more in 2 months with a cell phone than in 16 and a half years without a cell phone inside. So, and that's a whole other topic, but
Well,
it's
all right, but just to be clear to people, at least in the feds, it's a 300 level shot. You'll change your security level. I mean, cell phones in prisons and in halfway houses and all, no good. But
New York, yep.
But the reality is the reality.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So kind of lightning round now, because I want to make sure we hit everything. 5 minutes on correct the narrative campaign, 5 minutes on the documentary, and then let's see where we are. So who's going to start with correct the narrative campaign?
Okay. I think, let me take correct the narrative and then Kayleigh can do the documentary. I think that works perfectly. Correct the narrative is basically confronting communities that are more indifferent and antagonistic to the ideas of reform, reentry, and abolition, and all the other terms that are used in this space, and also that are indifferent and antagonistic to people that have criminal records, and confronting them with our successes, our humanity, and our agency. So that agency term is huge, because we're going to be going to the communities that are largely, more conservative, more Republican, not exclusively, and they're going to be more likely to be white. We're going to focus on Waukesha this coming up warm season and less COVID-y season. So I said less COVID, that can be, anybody can use that term, I give them permission. And so to just basically be there with physical presence as people who have criminal records, owning that experience with t-shirts that say, ask me about correcting the narrative. There will be virtual events, and the vignettes we've started with, as you spoke about earlier, the videos, that's what we've been able to do so far. But the physical events are going to be the bread and butter. Being in these communities on a regular basis, in these t-shirts, that people will start to see us, ask questions. What is correcting the narrative? What does this represent? There will be, I'm sure at some points, news coverage. Soon enough, ideally, I'm told I will be able to speak to the chief of police and the sheriff in this area. So get them alerted to what we're doing. I think it's big to let them know there's going to be people with criminal records coming to your very conservative, white community. So, that just be aware that ahead of time, or we're not doing anything bad. So making these connections ahead of time so that we can be at these events, and it's really built around meeting people where they are. Because a lot of times in this space, I feel we do a lot of yelling. We do a lot of expecting people to just come aboard because it's wrong what's going on, and that they should understand that we're people too, and that I shouldn't have to convince you of my value. But that's not how life is. Life is marketing. Life is me having to reach you where you are. Life is me having to connect with you in the language and in the way that you understand, and then get you to understand something on a broader scale by me coming at you in this way that is more effective for you. So it's, the example I use is that when you ask your mate for something, you don't just say, hey, do this. When you go to a grocery store, when you go to a restaurant, you don't just say, hey, bring me this food, because they could spit in it. You have certain ways you say it. You have certain ways you ask for something, because you know that there's an outcome you want that's more likely to happen if you ask it and you present yourself in a certain way. And as unfortunate as that can be in a situation where we're trying to show our value as human beings, that is how life is. And so you have to meet people where they are, and we're trying to do that by meeting communities where they are. And I really believe, and I've been hearing this from people in these communities that are leaders, that there's a lot of desire to come to this issue. There's a lot of understanding that what's going on in the country is very much something that affects communities all over the place, and it's wrong. But people want to be approached in a way that's not attacking, that they feel that they can slide in with whatever value they have in their time structure and maintain a certain comfort they have in their culture and their values, but still help out. And so we want to be able to do that, is building these bridges between communities where I am really strongly believing that they exist, but they're invisible right now, and just showing people that they're there and how they can get involved, but not sacrifice who they are in their communities and their values.
This is really a national undertaking. I mean, maybe you're using Wisconsin as a proof of concept.
Exactly.
But I mean, you and I talked about this on Clubhouse not that long ago, and it seems to me what you're doing is you're reaching out and communicating with people all over the country using things like Clubhouse and technology to try to form coalitions and find like-minded people. Is that fair?
100%. Shout out to Clubhouse, because Clubhouse, I made a lot of connections. Kayleigh, we made a lot of connections on there. It's crazy. So yeah, that's my social media, because I hate other social media, because I hate having to cater a certain post, and I'm always forgetting to tag people and all this. I hate that. But social media with Clubhouse, I can talk. I can explain things. That's my one thing I can do. And so making connections on there has been a marvelous way to build this and improve whatever we're doing But we hope to scale it, definitely. Go from Waukesha to statewide to countrywide. If we can do it right and prove the evaluation and the data we have from it can really change attitudes and get people more involved in things from these communities.
Hit me up later. I'll make a few more introductions for you. That would be great. So there's a Clubhouse success story, folks. Just letting you know. Kayleigh, tell us about the documentary and tell us, and also relate the short YouTube pieces to the documentary because they're so powerful.
Yeah, we're still working on it. So we actually have a production meeting like right after this with all the note cards laid out on the table. So I think it's important too to talk about a little bit more about the vignettes, and being that that's the same process and the mindset that we're trying to I'll use the word preaching to the non-choir as the work is going to do on the ground. It's just another platform that can be scaled globally. Anybody can see them. Obviously, eye-to-eye contact, hand-to-hand contact is more beneficial, but it's another way. And something else that Shannon and I have really been discussing lately is a lot of the stories that you see of people with criminal records has either been the spectacle. Hollywood stigmatizes. It's like, you look this way, you act this way. Now it's kind of shifting to like a pity narrative. I'm using Shannon's words, so give him credit, but it's true. So it's like gone from black to white, like it's all or nothing. Everything has kind of shifted where we want the truth to be seen. We want people to see that these are people. And again, the word is visibility. The word is humility and connection. And visibility is huge. And just seeing the authenticity that people want to do better. And especially, with Shannon kind of telling his story from the beginning, like, here's an example. Adam Purcell, we named him again. He's another good friend. He's going to be participating in the film as well. And his latest vignette was the one that was posted. As a filmmaker, I typically ask the people in front of the camera, what would you tell your younger self? Like, be who you needed when you were younger is another mantra of mine. Adam, like, changed my world. I've said this story many times because he literally responded, not literally, I don't know the verbatim, but he did a lot of time. And he said, if I would have changed the trajectory of my younger self, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I want to be who I am today. Like, I'm doing amazing things, he's proud of himself. And like, for someone, and even Shannon, to come from like doing something like that to, if that's what had to happen in order to be where we all are now, it's just, so that's what the film is diving into, are these big questions and like, what is right? What is wrong? Is there an answer? So it's explorative, and visibility is huge. And just asking people, why do we stigmatize? Why do we throw away cultures? Why do we lock people, humans, in cages? Why do we judge people from what they were sentenced to perhaps 20 years ago compared to who they are today? Can you even see them for who they are today?
The visceral reaction I had when I watched it, because there was one in particular who was an older Black gentleman sitting in a chair in what looked like a ballroom or something.
Yep, I think Andre. We think it was Brian. Was he wearing a black hoodie or a tan shirt?
I don't remember, but
okay.
but I remember his face. I don't remember what he was wearing, but the lighting, the lighting, the production value is really beautiful, and he's telling a story. He's telling his story, and I couldn't help but think how beautiful it is to be focused on an older Black man on camera who's not Morgan Freeman. You know what I mean? Like, it's not Hollywood telling the story of somebody. It's actually somebody making himself vulnerable enough for that to translate and then reach out and grab my heart. And that to me was the critical moment where I knew this was a project that I wanted to follow. And I love where you started your this part of the conversation, because our stories are sensationalized, or they're kind of, we're grouped into categories that aren't the way we group ourselves into categories. You know, it doesn't reflect our reality, but it definitely reflects somebody's sense of, I don't know how these things work, right? Someone's financing a movie, someone's financing a documentary. They make demands that they want to make. So how are you putting this together? How are you financing it? What are you thinking about distribution? Are you going to be entering this into festivals? I mean, what's your thinking about how to get the word out about this, and who's the audience?
You got to ask us in a week.
I was just gonna say, I'm like you. I feel like when you're talking, I'm literally seeing all the grants that we've applied to. Those are the exact questions. I'm like, which part do I pick from? But even like you said it, when depending on who finances it, you kind of have to mold the story to that. I don't like that. Like I like my freedom and creative control. So at this point, like we're like Shannon said, he's volunteering. I'm volunteering. I'm paying out of pocket for crew. I don't come from money, like that's not a thing. So we are hustling to find the right people. Maybe that is you watching. But yeah, I mean, things are flowing, so it's hard. Them by no means complaining, but those are great questions that we're answering and applying to grants. We're in the waiting period right now, I think from like 2 or 3. But yeah, I think we're all determined that it's going to happen, whether it takes longer because we have to be 100% independently financing or not. Time will tell. But distribution, yeah, definitely film festival. That would be great. I mean, I think every filmmaker wants that. However, I think we are much more interested in the social impact and having community events, like having a screening and a educational panel with the people who participate in the film. Or if we take it globally or nationally, going to the communities and seeking out the people with criminal records who are also making a difference in town, whether it's known or not. So the audience is what people might think opposite with the non-choir, the people like in Waukesha, Wisconsin that Shannon's describing, and the people who are indirectly and directly impacted loved ones, and using the power of storytelling. And Jason Soul used the word circle work, which I also do in my holistic woo-woo world, but like doing that together with these audiences by using the film as an educational piece that brings two perhaps polar opposite audiences together. That's the end goal in my mind.
All right, so you get to use a clip of this interview to reach directly out to finance people and distributors and all. So 30 seconds, look them right in the eye and tell them why this film, this documentary is different than others, and why they should be investing in you. Go.
I think that's a Shannon.
Okay. No problem. I didn't know if you want to take. So the reason why this should be financed is because the stories so often told are based on pity, fear, or danger. And even the ones that are being told right now, and I mean no knock on the great work being done, there's a lot of focus on the crime and on the individual as a previous bad person. We are focusing heavily on the success of humanity and agency, and that is how you get those who are not coming to this issue from the various ways that it currently is being promoted to come to this issue, to see us as actual people they can rely on and get to the heart of it. You want to see me, I need you to see me as somebody that you would be okay dating your daughter. Until you see me as somebody okay dating your daughter, you don't really see me as an equal or as a human being. And so our work is doing that. It's boiling down to get you to see exactly us as somebody you can be inviting into your family as an equal 100%. And no work we've been seeing is doing that. And that needs to get out there.
Lovely. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. So why don't each of you take a couple of minutes and just, what are the takeaways? What would you like people to remember from this interview? Why don't we start with Kayleigh, then we'll come back to Shannon. And please make sure that at the end of it, you give us your contact information, how people can find you.
Sure. A big one for me is just, again, it's acceptance and seeing people eye to eye. So I take that literally. I like to make eye contact with strangers. I like making small talk with strangers because those are the people who have changed my life. You don't know anything about their past. So there's like this really beautiful moment where you can just be present with another human. If we can take those little moments from just like passing people on the street or actually saying hello to the person who's making your coffee and make eye contact, not demanding things, not being so rushed and trying to move about your day. If we could take those tiny interactions, but then amplify them, especially when it comes to maybe a population that there is fear, doubt, judgment, stigma, like you're stigmatizing them with people with criminal records. That's just one example. The homeless population, addicts, like I could go on. So it's like, confront your fears, get out of your comfort zone. It's going to make you a better person. So for me, that first step would be making eye contact with strangers. And yeah, that's what I say. To contact me, my website is KayleighAtkinson.com. My name is kind of difficult to spell, but if you're watching this, you probably see it. There's no Y. I don't know if the Y is still in there. My Instagram is probably the best place to reach me. It's KALEIGHJO photo, Kayleigh Joe photo. I think you're going to be able to find us though. Yeah.
Shannon, your turn.
So for me, I'm going to speak to the groups that are doing great work in this space. Something that always stuck out to me that I think is really a takeaway that I want anybody that I speak to kind of take away is that the need for collaboration in this work is that we silo too often and that we have this tendency to compete, and that's not going to get us where we need to get to. We should all be working ourselves out of a job. That is a goal of mine. That is a goal, I think anybody in this work, if you're serious, that is what you want to do. And so reach out, make connections, try and really get things done on a group level, because individually none of us are going to be getting things done. I'm a baby in this work, so I don't really have a place to stand to say what should be happening in large organizations, but I also am somebody that is directly the group that you are trying to reach and help. And I know from being in there and speaking to people that nobody inside cares about your politics. Nobody cares about your petty disagreements. Nobody cares about your grant writing preferences. They care about getting out of prison, staying out of prison, not having people go to prison. On the other side, they care about not being the victims of crime. They care about not having their people be victims of crime. And that is what it's about. So we should be focusing on that goal instead of any other things that keep us from working together. And that would be my one thing I would say as a takeaway. For information to reach me, the communitynow.us is the website. You can email there and you reach me. I get all the emails from there and the other 7 email addresses that I have. I'm constantly paying attention to every form of communication on my phone. Kayleigh knows I'm glued to my phone. And we have a podcast that just started. It's not something I would say is necessarily mine. I'm the one doing it, but it's for another effort in the city to create a one-stop hub for events and organizations in Wisconsin called the Wisconsin Decarceration Platform. So the first episode is up on Soundbars, which is SOUNDBARZZ.com. It is a great new platform that is free for anyone who has any media in the space of reentry reform, decarceration work, to post on there by a woman named Julie Cottingham in Britain. So yeah, it's that's, I think it would be the basic gist of how to communicate with me or find any work that I'm involved in, and the podcast that just hopefully went up this morning. So,
but Clubhouse, I think, is important because we have a lot of really cool. Shannon hosts a lot of really cool rooms. What's your handle on Clubhouse?
We Can Do Better is my handle. Is the username that I have, but
Awesome.
My name is also on there. So either one, you'll find my name or the username, which is We Can Do Better.
Wonderful. Shannon, Kayleigh, thank you so much. I'm a huge admirer. I'm going to be following your work, and please stay in touch and join us on Monday, March 9th. What are your Central Time?
Yep.
Your Central Time. So it's 6 p.m. on Monday, March 29th, Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us for our 250th meeting. Love and thanks to prayers to my partner, Babs. Thank you both. Thank you, Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. And have a blessed day, all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are out.
Awesome.
Thank you both.
Thank you. I hope everything goes well.
Thank you so much. All right. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Awesome.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to send you this recording as well.
Oh, yeah, I streamed it live from my page. I think Kayleigh did as well. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll save, right? It won't just
Yeah.
disappear.
Nope.
Yeah, I think it just repeats then when you
No,
click
but
on it.
I'm sending you the MP4 too.
Okay,
Gotcha.
perfect.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, Jeff. You have a good day.
Bye.